Hey, Retcon Raider here. Just a little late with the Q3 retro, but things have been slightly rough the last couple of months. For those who didn't hear about it, and I can't really blame you if you haven't, since I've since removed the video about it. But my mother, my mother passed away in late September. I don't really want to rehash the whole thing here because even now, a month after all of it played out, it's still hard to wrap my head around everything that happened. It was just so quick. And, we've got other stuff we're going through now. But the short of it is that my mother survived cancer 15 or so years ago. But she suffered so much during treatment that she swore off ever going through it again. And then, fast forward to now. The past year or two, it apparently came back. And rather than worry me or my siblings, she did her best to conceal it, and did a pretty good job of it too, while she basically tried to self-medicate. It all caught up with her in late November when she started having strange episodes. Really frightening moments where she'd call me in a panic about something and then be completely unable to articulate what it was that she was panicking about. She was a sharp woman, spent decades doing office work, and despite some of her eccentricities, despite the fact that she was 70 years old, she was always pretty great about articulating her thoughts or keeping track of the minutiae of things. She's the one I picked up my habit of writing a million notes from, because that was just her style. Even now as we're going through all of her things, she's got a lot of notes about where she got things, or what she liked about things, or what she hoped to do with things, whether sell it or keep it or give it to someone, among other things, dream journals, her thoughts on her favorite TV shows, recipes she wanted to try out, and of course a lot of stuff about alternative treatments she hoped to try, which things she felt were getting results, and so on. But yeah, so it was kind of terrifying to suddenly see her so confused at times, just struggling to find the right words or to even give me the gist of what she was trying to say. And then, the next morning she'd be fine again. She'd wave off my concerns, saying she'd had a bad dream or hadn't gotten enough sleep or caffeine, and it'd be normal again for a day or two, right up until she would call me again. But it did make me much more alert during the later, subsequent time I spent with her, and it became increasingly obvious that there was something very wrong. And, I shared my concerns with her, but she was insistent it was fine, and she'd be sharp enough that she'd put up some pretty convincing arguments, though in the end, they did become a bit more emotional than logical. But as we got into July, August, I couldn't help but notice she was avoiding or pushing away the rest of her friends and family. And then towards the end of August, she fell one night, hurt her leg, and had to call me to come and help her back up. And that's when it became evident just how bad things had really gotten. She'd lost a ton of weight, muscle mass. There were other signs that her system was just compromised. And at that point, I finally went behind her back. I started trying to set up an intervention. She was a very proud woman, resistant to being told what to do, especially by her kids. But we were hoping that by presenting a united front that we could gently pressure her into at least getting a diagnosis and some low-impact treatment to make things easier on her. I think we all suspected it was cancer. Her most of all. But there were other things. There were other things that, if properly treated, could have really helped, I think. Well, regardless, unfortunately, that's really as far as it all got. Things got a whole lot worse very, very quickly after that. That was early September when we were setting up the intervention, and And 2 weeks after that, including a brief and very, very frustrating stay at the hospital, that was it. She was gone. So yeah, that was around the time I was convinced to put out a video that I've since taken back down prior to the last few days. When there was still hope that we could move her up north to a therapy facility that would at least, again, make things easier for her. Keep her closer to the rest of the family so we could all chip in. It was going to be an expensive and logistical nightmare, but I don't know. For better or worse, it didn't end up getting that far. And, you know, I can't help but torture myself wondering if there was something I could have done differently. If I'd noticed things sooner or pushed for a faster intervention. If that might have made a difference. At least kept her around for a while longer. I mean, given how far along things were by that point, I guess it probably really wouldn't have changed anything. But I still can't help but wonder. Anyway, this being the world that it is, her passing away just segged into a new flavor of nightmares to deal with. So now we're looking at extended probate, sorting through her life and trying to figure out what to do with everything that she left behind. We've got new taxes and expenses and legal fees to deal with, and it's this whole big process that none of us were really ready to tackle, especially not right after our mother's passing. But, you know, the world keeps spinning, there are always new bills to pay. So it just didn't really leave a lot of room for regrets or mourning. I took a couple of weeks off, burned through pretty much my entire production buffer. But by the time we hit October, I had to get back to work. YouTube is basically my job these days. Not a great paying job, but that plus some other investments was enough to help me get by this past year or so. Which I guess is more than a lot of folks can say, especially self-employed folks, so I really can't complain. But, you know, really I think it was more just hard at first to kind of wrap my head around the idea of playing games again so soon after all that. It did help me keep from dwelling too much. I was spiraling for a week or two. There were a lot of unknowns that were all just sort of piling up and stressing me out, not knowing what was going to happen to her or me or the cats. You know, I had every intention of moving up north to be closer to where we were going to hopefully move her. But this is an awful time for that sort of relocation, and there was no guarantee I'd find something large enough in my price range that would have been big enough for both me and the cats and sustainable on the current YouTube income. You know, combined with all of the attached bills and so on. It was a nightmare trying to figure all that stuff out, and then... Anyway, as it currently stands, things are all sort of locked up right now while we grind our way through the legal process. Things are not back to normal. Hard to say if they ever will be, really, but I at least have some breathing room to start shoring up finances, considering my next moves. And, you know, with expenses looming, there is still an impending need to consider relocating somewhere more affordable. I'm probably overdue for a downsizing anyway, at least if I plan on sticking with the whole YouTube thing. But that's all stuff I can worry about after we get the probate handled now. Once I've gotten a gander at where I end up financially, after everything is said and done. And, while I hated making that video where I basically pleaded for help without outright asking for it, I'm incredibly grateful to all the viewers, Raiders included, who took it upon themselves to donate. It did help defray costs, ease my mind a little. I mean, there's still a ton of expenses and unknowns bearing down on us, but that did help me at least break out of that spiral, that initial panic spiral. I didn't want to do that video at all. I hate the idea of being a content creator who who emotionally manipulates or constantly cajoles viewers into giving him things. Honestly, that's why I've always had such a hard time with even just basic self-promotion or ad placements in my videos. But the situation was really, really dire for a moment there. And I let some friends, they know who they are, convince me to do it anyway, to step outside my comfort zone and do what basically had to be done. So yeah, I hate that I did it, but I am glad that I did. And obviously, I took it down shortly afterwards, since after her passing, it just didn't feel right to keep it up. What all of this has shown me, though, is that despite being a tiny channel in the grand scheme of YouTube, I've been lucky enough to build a modest but very dedicated audience. The passion and compassion that people showed in the wake of that video was an eye-opener, and the last thing I want to do is respond to that sort of outpouring of support is by giving up on the channel. That said, the recent events did make it clear that I can't keep limping along the way I was. The channel is successful enough that it was covering my basic expenses, but not really leaving much room for growth or investment, or for these sorts of emergencies. If I want to make the YouTube thing work, then I have to finally do what I was so hesitant to do ever since I first started. And I really do need to start treating it more like a job. I mean, obviously, there's already been some signs of that. I've upped the video output a little in October. Not by a huge amount, but a little. I've started experimenting with thumbnails again, trying to make them a little more likely to draw in impulse clicks. Though that's very much a work in progress. I've started leaning a little more heavily into ad slots on my videos, still not to the degree that most creators recommend, but enough to make a notable impact on my monthly earnings. And I've gotten a little more aggressive about trying to push the channel, though I do still have to work on that. I really need to get past the mental roadblock that sort of discourages me from doing that sort of thing. It's just not in my nature to constantly push people to like or subscribe or comment or to check out the PayPal or the Patreon or the new YouTube memberships or that Nexus GG thing that someone recommended I set up. Even though I know full well that doing those sorts of things is basically what keeps the lifeblood pumping through a YouTube channel. It's a small step, the stuff that I've done so far, but it is a start. And it has had some minor impact on the overall earnings in October, though I'll admit it's a little hard to separate the residual well-wishing from September from the actual sustainable earnings just yet. Well-wishing, although absolutely welcome and much appreciated, isn't something I expect people to do forever. There's more that I would like to do in the future, but all the more ambitious stuff is on the back burner right now. While I finish dealing with the current legal and financial entanglements, half my time's going into just sorting through my mother's stuff and trying to figure out what to do with it all. But after that, sometime next year, I assume, once I've stabilized my finances and possibly relocated, I'm hoping I can really buckle down and get the channel moving again. I really need to break some bad habits and streamline my production process so I can do more frequent uploads. So I can jump into newer games a little faster, ride those hype waves a little better, or maybe even get back to doing the old overview sort of videos, the ones I used to do back in the day. We'll circle back to that in a minute. I've got that a bit further down as a separate bullet point. I mean, there will always certainly be things that I'm resistant to. Clickbait titles, thumbnails with big, goofy faces on them, top 10 lists, sponsored videos where I shill for something I don't really like or care about, but get paid to do. But we may get to the point where I'm more comfortable with certain things, like more casual gameplay streams or even live streams for games that might not get high enough numbers for a full episodic treatment, but which I still want to share. I've had a few folks recommend face cam or cat cams, but I can't say I'm ever really going to be comfortable with that sort of thing. I might find a compromise that I'm comfortable with, though, as I start easing myself into the idea of more casual and streamlined videos. Especially if we can ever get the channel to the point where I can afford to bring in another person to help with certain things, like art or music or editing. But that's a long ways out. The current goal is just to get the channel to the point where it's financially stable and viable for one person, let alone any sort of team, even a single part-timer. But yeah, like I said, I don't know if the channel will work out long-term. But in the short term, I really would like to make it all work. Not only for the raiders and the rank-and-file viewers who want to see it keep going, but also just because I'm still at the point where I enjoy doing it, and because this sort of thing does help me keep my mind off of other things. It's a rare opportunity to find yourself doing something that you both enjoy and can theoretically make a living off of. And while we're not quite there just yet, I can definitely see some promise there. I just need to break some bad habits, take it more seriously, see if I can find a good compromise between what I know will work and what I'm actually willing to do. Easier said than done, but that's just life in general, I think. That said, normally this is where I'd start seeing into the usual Retcon Radar segment, but I think we'll take a pass on that this time around. I haven't really been keeping up as much with the gaming scene the past couple of months for obvious reasons. But aside from that, there's also been some noise about folks wanting to see me maybe separate that out of the retros and make it its own thing. I mean, first of all, it really was actually kind of its own thing at one point. That's basically what the old one-shot overview videos were. But yeah, I get it. Those did tend to get decent numbers. It just sort of fell out of my rotation because the YouTube algorithm never seemed to know quite what to do with them. YouTube tends to get really confused when a content creator puts out more than one type of content, even if it's related content like reviews and gameplay streams about the same games. That's a big part of the reason why I just ended up sort of leaning into the long-form gameplay videos, because it was the easiest type of video to maintain on a regular basis. But then again, I've never really been one to cooperate with the algorithm anyway, so why start now? Like I said earlier, one of the things I'm currently considering is a return to doing some of those old sort of overview videos. Short videos where I just highlight some random game that recently caught my eye and I wanted to share. Given how bogged down we've gotten in ongoing series lately, I do feel like I really need to start peppering in more one-shots or short-form content, mini-series and the like, for the folks who really aren't getting invested in whatever one or two big ongoing projects I currently have running. Overviews are a good way to do that. Maybe paired with more casual one-shot videos about demos or random indie games that just happen to catch my fancy. I mean, not everything needs to be turned into an ongoing series, but this would be a great way to at least make the viewers more aware of things that have caught my eye, and then, if they gain traction from there, we can certainly revisit them later. That was essentially my thoughts on stuff like Dreams in the Witch House or Sovereign Syndicate, both of which we touched on just a couple of months ago. Or Hard West 2, which we might actually still end up revisiting for a full run. That's up in the air at the moment. Again, at the risk of getting ahead of myself, in theory, that's the sort of thing that a more casual live stream would really be ideal for. Just peeking in on some random new game or demo to see what it's like. Still not really set up for those, though, but that's the sort of thing I'd like to keep in mind for if and when I end up relocating, because then I can look for a place that's just better suited for those sorts of real-time recording sessions, preferably someplace where I'm not right next to an airport and a highway and a bunch of neighbors who really love to mow their lawn at every hour of the day. I will say, though, before we roll into the wrap-up phase, that we did just wrap up Season 2 of Wildermyth. That was a fairly short series, only about 15 episodes long, but I had a lot of fun doing it. I feel like that's the sort of short or mid-length series that's ideal for our secondary production slot, because we can rotate through slightly more varied content every couple of months. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Wrath of the Righteous, but that's essentially what I'd call a forever project. because we're going to be doing that one for a long, long time. That's the sort of game that, at my current pace, is going to take something like another year for us to actually finish. I don't really regret doing that, but it would definitely lead to viewer stagnation if I tried running 2 of those sorts of series side by side. That's why, as we continue grinding through the rest of Q4, the secondary slot will be rotating through a few shorter projects. We've got that Through the Ashes mini coming up next, which I reckon will run about 10 to 12 episodes. That should be 5 or 6 weeks. And then after that, we've got the new chapter of Scarlet Hollow. That's only going to be about 6 episodes, so that's like 3 weeks. And then after that, maybe Season 3 of Wildermyth, or possibly a brief revisit to Baldur's Gate 3, or a short peek at Colony Ship, or just some other one-shot or short-form content. I do have a short list, but until we actually jump into a project, you know, there is some degree of flexibility there based on how polls go from one month to the next. Things change. Interests change. They wax and wane. So, by the time I actually do get to one of the projects further down on my list, it's entirely possible the Raiders just might not be interested in it anymore. So at that point, I take a step back, I reevaluate, and I look at the current numbers. For now, the only things set in stone, I think, are that Wrath will continue ongoing, because that is the number 1 slot of every poll for the past year. And Through the Ashes, obviously. We want to jump through that, and then Scarlet Hollow, which it does seem to be a Raider favorite. Those are both pretty much guaranteed to push us all the way out into December. After that, I'd say it's really a toss-up. We'll see where we're at. I mean, I suppose in the end, it is mostly going to be the Raiders who will end up calling the shots on which projects I should prioritize. But I'll still try to squeeze in the occasional random side project, especially if it's something I feel really passionate about. I don't want us to get so bogged down in any 1 or 2 forever projects that folks get bored waiting for something that might be more their speed. Just part of trying to walk that fine line between what I know I should do and what I actually want to do. Such is life. Regardless, as always, we'll wind things down with a proper round of thanks. I always say that I couldn't do this without the support of folks like you. And that has never been more true than it was in Q3. Recent events have been tough to navigate, and we're still looking at some pretty choppy waters in the months to come. But it's a whole lot easier thanks to the stability and support that I've been getting from both the Raiders and the rank-and-file viewers. That's not at all restricted to just the folks who pledged or backed or donated, but also to the folks who just took time out of their days to watch videos, to comment, like, or subscribe, or just generally engage with me or the channel. It might not seem like much when you isolate a single like or view, but it does add up, as proven by my month-to-month analytics. The more overall engagement a video gets, the more subscribers we get on the channel, the more I'll be able to focus on the projects I want to do, as opposed to the ones that I deem to be the most financially viable, or the ones that are most likely to please our algorithm overlords. And that goes double for the folks who actually do donate to the cause, Raider or otherwise. A dedicated subset of the Raiders basically funded our recent return to Wildermyth, a series which I love making, but which doesn't pull in high enough numbers on its own to really be financially viable. It's thanks to them that I'm even considering returning for Season 3 a little later down the line, and possibly even more after that. I mean, I'd love to do all 6 of the main story campaigns, and they do have some sort of expansion in the works. The Raiders are also a big part of why I keep plugging away at Wrath, or why I'd like to someday return to some of the older projects like Kingmaker or Darkest Dungeon. The Raiders are many and varied, especially these days, but I like working on projects that I know they really want to see me work on. It's gratifying knowing that people are so invested in what I do that they're literally willing to pay me to keep on doing it. That said, this month, I'm going to thank each and every single one of the Raiders who was active during Q3 or October, all the fine folks who helped make these videos possible, and helped me navigate through the worst of the recent events. This might take a moment. As I said, the ranks of the Raiders have grown somewhat lately. But I'll talk quick. So, let's start with the oft-overlooked Raiders in Training. Thank you to A.R. Jackson, Adam Lacko, AN, Another Walk, Ben Hollingshead, Chai T, Christopher McKenney, David Stewart, David Wellman, Dawen Liang, Denton EX, Emma Long, Fo Twain Zero, Frank Barone, Gilberath, Gristoffel, Heavenly Dragon, Henrik Reimer, Hobotron, James Maroulis, Chris Lighthawk, Luke, Manuel Lordy, Michael N., Mike Sin AFK, Nabosha, Oscar Van Vliet, Patricia Murray, Pete NZ, Purge, Robert Turner, Stephanie Taylor, Volk Rules, and Yvrath. Then special thanks to the Raider rank and file. The honorary Raiders like 666, Adam Coles, Alexander Hochbaum, Austin Fagan, Benjamin Gray, Bose77, C1S, Cage, Chronosaur, David Pascal, PJ Mowgli, Dupin, Ego2, Eric Speegers, Ethan Vonderweed, Evan Prince, Flame Beard, Gareth Bryant, ICU Uwu, Idabaw, James Bullock, Lulalu, Matt Harris, Misha, Morgwen, Oil of Hope, Optimal 2, Peter, Porphy's Attorney, Rob H., Roman Berger, Sam Russell, Served Cold, Sean Smith, Stephen Reeder, Steve Saxa, and Tote Alborg. I'll assume I pronounced all of those names correctly. Followed by extra special thanks to the ever-growing ranks of veteran raiders: AdriRaven, Anacronian, Blaine Landowski, Bob, Dale Johnson, Dr. Funkenstein, Glenn Jensen, Gresham, Indiana Smith, Jacob Kalabiński, Jace Orcblood, Jeffrey McKenz, Jeremy Worth, Kami Shahi, Caspis, Killer Minnow, Lady Shayna, Laura and Mike, Leroy Nukinson, Mark Giemza, Max Robespierre, Michael Bain, Nerdprof, Neurolancer, Nishko, Nod Goblin Nico, Maximus Savage, Scott Brown, Sensei Yums, Sean Orpin, Sandre Martin Jensen, Stoltz, Terry Williams, The Link King, The Book Thief, Thomas K. Arata, Varshoon, Vertigo 322, and Zarmal. And of course, infinite thanks to the Raider Lords and Captains, the folks who have gone above and beyond to help keep the channel going, both financially or otherwise. Dragon Matrix 7, Mathew Smith, Revenant, Alois, Anerdinwarpaint, Drakiith, Eerie V23, EgonAlter, Emile, Exsellsior, Gottlieb, James Trimmier, Kazorm, Nathan Welch Jr., RandomPassrby, RobbyB, Thomas Piątkowski, Triphoppenskip, and Valinrook. Thanks for your support, guys. I really couldn't keep doing this without folks like you. I should note that there were also a lot of folks who donated through the YouTube Super Thanks or PayPal or other venues this past couple of months who I won't name, since I'm not sure what their preferences are in that arena, but I do want them all to know that their support was also greatly appreciated. I'll just collectively refer to them as the Shadow Raiders. The sort of raiders who are so stealthy and secretive that they could be just about anyone, anywhere. Possibly even you. That said, assuming that you're not a raider, shadow or otherwise, and you would like to become one, then feel free to check out the links to my Patreon or my YouTube memberships down in the description below. Rank and membership does come with some modest privileges, such as access to exclusive monthly polls, early access to certain videos, and higher priority on your character submissions for games that allow it, such as our recent Solasta or Wildermyth minis, or potential future projects like Xenonauts 2, or a possible second season of Phoenix Point. For those who don't really care about the benefits but still want to support the channel, you can also do that through PayPal or with the Super Thanks button on any of my videos. I also just recently set up a Nexus GG account, which is a third-party vendor platform that deals in Steam keys for a wide variety of games, including several that I've previously covered, such as Phoenix Point and Wrath of the Righteous. Buying a key through that platform with my vendor code, Retcon Raider, all one word, cuts me in for a share of the sale, whether or not it's a game that I personally recommended, but we'll just pretend I recommended all of them. Except for the bad ones, don't buy those. They're bad. And of course, even if you can't or just don't want to throw money at me, believe me, I get it, that's fine too. Anything and everything you do to help support the channel is greatly appreciated, whether it's via direct donations or by just engaging with the content I create. views, watch time, comments, likes, subscriptions. Those all contribute towards the channel's continued growth and sustainability. Even just the fact that you've stuck around to watch this video for as long as you have will help support the channel, if just a little bit. And hey, I appreciate that. Thanks. At any rate, I've got more projects piling up, so I should probably move on to the next one in my queue. I know this retro is a bit of a bummer, a lot of real talk and not much in the way of video games, but you know, we've got the Q4 retro a couple of months out, and at that point I think we'll be a good ways back towards normalcy. Plus, of course, we've got plenty of fun videos to look forward to between now and then. But for now, this is Retcon Raider, signing off. Thanks for listening. Oh, and remember, if you need to get in touch with me for any reason, you can do so in the comments section on any of my videos or community posts, or you can contact me over on Discord, Facebook, Patreon, Twitter, or through my official email address. As always, links are in the description.